back. We're here today talking about sex crimes and the criminals that commit them and what we should do about it. We're talking with Michael, who was convicted of molesting 4 children. We're also talking with Frank, who battles the memories of being raped as a child when he was an altar boy. Michael, before we left, Frank was saying that he thinks that people who sexually offend children should spend the rest of their lives in jail behind bars. What do you think of that when you hear someone who has been a victim himself say that?
Well, I don't think it's as black and white as everyone should, every offender should spend the rest of their lives in jail. I certainly think it's true that there are some that probably can never be safe again in the community. But I don't think that's a vast majority, and I think the only way that the community really is safe is to identify the offender, incapacitate him, and treat him.
Michael, can I come in here for just a second?
Sure.
My understanding is that you're on parole and you're here in silhouette with us because your neighbors don't know that you're a sexual offender.
Well,
and my question to you is, do you think those people in your hometown should know about you?
Well,
yes, they should know about him.
What do you think, Frank?
Yes, of course, they have to. They have to be able to make an informed decision about what this guy has done and decide, knowing him and knowing his background, whether it's safe to have their children be in contact with him.
Well, if I can address that, first of all, I'm not in an area where there are children. It was, first of all, one of my conditions of parole, but my parole has been completed, by the way. Secondly, one of my own personal plans is not to be in an area where I will be around children, nor do I frequent areas where there are going to be children, precisely for the reason that everyone's afraid. I mean, it's a part of taking responsibility for where I'm at right at this moment.
And from the audience.
But who's to say you can be trusted? And why take that chance? Why take that chance that you could victimize another child? I mean, it's the children that need to be protected rather than worrying so much about the perpetrator.
Well, you know, I certainly agree that the safety of children is paramount. But I don't agree that offenders, once they've reached a level of recovery, are still a threat to children or the community.
But there's no way of telling what that level of recovery is when you've reached that point.
Well, but I don't agree with that,
sex offenders in general are very, very suave people. They're very nice people. They're likable, like you are. You have a very likable voice and demeanor, and that's the way that these sex offenders, especially people who prey on children, are able to manipulate children and manipulate the adults around them so that they don't get confronted. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again," and they don't get reported. That's why you've been convicted of 4. How many others are there?
Michael, that is a good question. You were convicted of 4, but you would say, were there other victims before you were caught?
Oh, yes.
About how many more victims?
Well, I started offending right after I was raped, around 14. And until the time I was arrested, I victimized in the neighborhood of 50 children.
You got a reaction from that. What do you think when you hear that?
You made my point.
Hold on, Frank. Let's listen. What do you think when you hear that?
I think it's terrible, but I have a question for Michael. Michael, did I understand you to say that these people that you preyed on, these young children that you preyed on, was between ages 12 and 13?
That's correct.
They seem as though they came from broken homes.
Yes.
They seem as though they weren't getting any love. Now, my question to you is, what is it that make you think what you was doing to these young people was giving them love? Can you answer that?
It's part of the distortion. It's the understanding. One of the things that I had to do to appreciate what I did was to look at the values that I grew up with and that motivated me in my life, and I discovered that a lot of them were distorted. Many of them grew out of my own molestation, the values that I learned out of that.
But Michael, I think the question was, did you think that you were actually giving these children love, or were you very clear with the fact that you were abusing them?
No. At the time, I really felt that I was loving them, yes.
From the audience.
First of all, I'm a survivor of a sex molestation since I'm 3 years of age. What I mean, I get really ticked off when they say, well, because I was molested, that's the reason why I molest other children. That's a cop-out.
Well,
Because I do not go around molest anybody else, and I assume that, you know, you don't either. You know, that's a cop-out.
No. I understand that question, and I think you're absolutely right. This is not meant to be a cop-out, and I'm not blaming that. I take responsibility for my actions. I did something that was horribly, horribly wrong.
Question.
If most victims are offenders, how do we trust either one of them?
Excellent question.
What?
The gentleman says, if most victims turn out to be offenders, how do we trust either
Well, the
one?
thing
Well,
is-
I don't think that that's true. That's
No,
a black and white statement.
I agree with them on that. There
Yeah.
are some victims that turn out to be offenders. There are probably also some offenders who were not victims. Father
That's
Porter,
right.
for example, claimed to me in one of our taped telephone conversations that he had never been molested himself as a child. I think that people who make those statements, I'm not saying you, but wherever you got it from, are blaming the victims, and they're silencing the victims again. Is what they're
Michael,
doing
let
by
me
saying
ask you
that kind of
this.
thing.
Just so we can understand a little bit more of the anatomy of your brain, what you're going through when you molest. What is it about children that turns a pedophile on, specifically?
Well, I want to preface this remark by saying that trying to make rational sense out of irrationality is very difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons why people who look inside at people like me find it difficult to put any reason to why it happens. They are very irrational feelings that motivate us. And it's straightening out those irrational feelings that is part of the recovery. I'm sorry, I lost your question, Rolonda.
No, I was just I wanted to get back to that because we have to take a break right now, but I really want to know what it is, as you were molesting these 50 children, what was it that you personally got out of it? I mean, what is it about having sex with a child that turns on a pedophile? One thing almost everyone agrees when it comes to the punishment for pedophiles is that the system is failing us. We're going to talk to a woman who says that, like most rapists, her rapist was never caught, but she may spend the rest of her life being a prisoner herself of some of the horrible memories that she has to live through because of that rape. We'll be right back, and we'll continue with you, Michael, when we do.